Why won't my garage door go up and down? That's the problem right there, a broken spring. So at this point, what do? Well, we've got to replace this broken spring. When you replace one spring, you should replace both of them. They're both old and they have the same kind of properties. So you really want two of the same type of springs. So when you wind them up, they'll have the same sort of resistance. How do you know what spring to buy? If you look at the hardware store, there's all sorts of different types of springs. Well, there's a couple of different ways you can tell. There's some colors on the end. This one has a red color, and you should also measure them. You have to measure 20 of the coils, and 20 of the coils right here is about 4 5/8 approximately. Now if we have a look at the chart, we take a look at the closest coil to that measurement. So we could go with a wire gauge of 0.225, which is about 4.5 inches. But I decided to go just a little bit higher than that with the 0.234. Now you might think to yourself, how on earth am I going to get these springs off? Okay, well, this one long pole right here, you actually have to feed them all the way off the end. So first we got to take the drums off on the end, and then we move the spring all the way off, put the new spring all the way back, and that's basically it. These are the different types of tools you want to use. We've got a socket wrench with a couple of different types of sockets. Then we've got a just combination wrench set, so we can find the right wrenches to use, and also a ratcheting wrench set, which is useful. That kind of quickens up the process of loosening up the bolts. And then these are the really important ones. These are your torsion bars, and these are going to help you safely remove the garage door torsion springs. So now we're going to remove our first spring with these torsion bars and our wrench. They fit into the little hole on the end of the spring. The way I know that it's seated fully into that hole is that I've marked it with a piece of black tape, which is very important to make sure that it's seated fully into the hole because you don't want it coming loose. These springs are under a lot of tension, so when we loosen the nut to release this from the bar, we don't want the spring flying off. So we want to make sure that these bars are held tightly. I have a 7-inch wrench, so I'm going to remove that, and it's coming down. So now it's under a lot of tension right there. So now we've got that released. It takes a lot of effort to move that up. That's how much tension is on there. We put our second torsion bar all the way in, lift it up, take the first one out, move that one down, and we just keep doing this. And I'm just going slowly. I'm not a professional at this. So we just take it easy, be careful, safety first. As the spring begins to unwind, it will move along the rod, and that's perfectly fine. It might take about 30 or so turns, quarter turns. And that's it. The one end of the spring is loosened. Now we have to loosen the other end. This is a 9/16 socket and wrench. And on the bottom. So once you've loosened up the spring, you can see that it just glides freely along the pole. Now we got to get the drums off. On this particular drum, there are 2 bolts holding it in place. A pretty small screw, it's a 3/8. So we just hold it in place and release it. Wow, this one was on way too loose. So when we tighten that back up, we'll make sure to tighten both of them. Now we remove the drum on the other end so the pole can move freely and we can get the springs on and off. That's our second drum loose. So now we can slide the pole all the way down. Now that's released it enough that we can pull the drum carefully off and then pull the spring all the way down. And that's our spring off. And our second spring. So you can see the new springs and the old springs. Old springs are a little bit shorter, obviously because that's when I went up slightly a size. I actually found these on homedepot.com for cheaper. I usually shop a lot of stuff on Amazon, but for this particular gauge I found it cheaper on Home Depot, so you got to shop around. And don't get me wrong, cheaper is not always better. These are highly rated and they're good quality and they're a good brand. We just got to make sure that they're matching, which they are. Looking good. Make sure to put the springs on the right way on the pole. You have to make sure the spring is wound in the direction, the same direction as the one that you took off. So I know that the broken spring that I took off on the left side was pointing this way, which was this way. So I know that this spring on the left matches the one on the left that I took off, and it's the right way. And the second one goes on the other side, so the bolts line up. Now we put the drum back on. Now put the pole, slip the pole back in the bracket. Make sure to use the same hole that the spring was on previously. You can tell it was on this one. This bolt slips through both ends of the springs, and so does this one. Now we tighten up. Before you tighten the drum, go ahead and clamp a wrench to the pole so it doesn't move, and so that you attach both drums at the same tightness level. The cables need to be slightly loose, but not so loose that they come off of the drum wheels themselves. Now we tighten the drums. Now we tighten the new spring in the same direction that we took it off, counting the amount of quarter turns that you make, so that we can match the second spring on the other side. And now we can tighten up the screws, the bolts. Once you're done, your garage door should come up fairly easily like this. And about halfway, it should stay right about there, not coming up or down too much. So just like this is perfect, but if it comes down, then your springs are too loose. If it comes up, then your springs are too tight. You can adjust them with just a couple of turns. Now I've added some white lithium grease to the track. This is what it should be like.
Perfect. It sounds great.